British serial killer John George Hay was convicted in 1949 of murdering 6 people, although he claimed responsibility for up to 9. He seems mostly to have killed for money and routinely took over or sold his victims' assets once he killed them. His nickname, the Acid Bath Killer, came from the method he used to get rid of his victims after he bludgeoned or shot them to death. He would dissolve their bodies in vats of sulfuric acid. Hay's reasoning for doing so was a misunderstanding of the term corpus delicti. Cornell Law's Legal Information Institute defines the term as the idea that the requisite elements of a crime must be proven before an individual can be tried for the crime. But directly translated from Latin, it means body of the crime. Hay took that to mean that if there was no literal body, he couldn't be tried for murder. So he went ahead and dissolved the bodies. Hay was eventually caught thanks to a tip from a friend of his last victim, tried and found guilty. He was executed by hanging on August 10, 1949. Dorothea Helen Puente derived her income from 2 sources in Sacramento, California. She ran a 16-room boarding house for elderly and infirm people, and she rented out an upstairs apartment in downtown Sacramento. But her income didn't just come from rent. She also had a habit of cashing her tenants' Social Security checks. Her tenants, on the other hand, had a habit of, turning up missing. November 11, 1988 changed all of that though. That's the day that homicide detectives visited the boarding house at the behest of a social worker who was concerned about a missing client, the boarding house being said client's last known address. The house was searched, but the search yielded nothing. The backyard, however, that's a whole nother story. After a tenant reportedly having seen the backyard full of holes that were later filled in, the detectives did some literal digging and found human remains. Puente wasn't a person of interest yet, so she was able to escape Sacramento and head to Los Angeles, after which police excavating the backyard of the house found several bodies in the ground. She was eventually caught in Los Angeles and charged with 9 counts of murder. In 1993, she was convicted of 3 killings and given a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The newspapers came up with the nickname, the Death House Landlady. She died in prison on March 27, 2011. If you're at all interested in serial killers, you almost certainly know about Rader. He's one of the most infamous killers in history. Like Ted Bundy, Rader had a carefully constructed image that belied his crimes. Between 1974 and 1991, Rader killed 10 people in Wichita, Kansas, typically by strangling them with any of a variety of materials. Rope, plastic bags, nylon stockings, his hands, you name it. He named himself in the letters he wrote to the media, always signing off as BTK, which he at one point clarified stood for bind, torture, kill. After killing his last known victim, Dolores C. Davis, in 1991, he actually stopped both killing and writing for over a decade. Then he suddenly started writing letters and leaving a trail of puzzles for the police and the media in 2004. That was the beginning of the end for Rader. The police tracked him down and he was arrested at his home on February 25, 2005. He was charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder on February 28, 2005. He pled guilty on June 27th and was sentenced on August 18th to 10 consecutive life sentences. He's currently incarcerated at the El Dorado Corrections Facility in Kansas. Chris Albright was only convicted of the murder of 1 person, which means he doesn't qualify as an official serial killer. He was charged with the murders of 2 additional people though, and had he been convicted of all 3, he would have fit the FBI's criteria. Here are some facts. On December 13, 1990, Dallas-based sex worker Mary Lou Pratt was found dead. She had been shot in the back of her head and her eyes were missing. On February 19, 1991, Susan Patterson, also a sex worker in Dallas, was found dead. She had been shot 3 times. Her eyes, too, were missing. On March 19, 1991, Shirley Williams, a 3rd sex worker operating in Dallas, was found dead. She had been shot twice. She also had bruises on her face and a broken nose, and, as you may have guessed, her eyes were missing. By now, you probably have a good idea what this guy's nickname was: the Eyeball Killer. Albright was arrested at home on March 22, 1991, charged with all 3 murders and tried in December of that year. He was found guilty of the murder of Shirley Williams and sentenced to life in prison. Baby farming is a terrifying phrase and concept, but during the Victorian era, it was a very popular business for people to take in unwanted babies and children for money. Unfortunately, a lot of baby farmers also became serial killers, dispatching of the kids they were supposed to take care of in order to make the money they collected for them to go further. While that's obviously disturbing in itself, the most troubling thing of all is the fact that no one really knows just how many children lost their lives to baby farmers turned murderers during that point of time. Amelia Sachs and Annie Walters, for example. The duo known as the Finchley Baby Farmers operated for just a few years at the turn of the century, but killed an unknown number of babies and children. Some estimates peg the number around 20, but honestly, no one knows for sure and probably never will. They were caught when Walter's landlord became suspicious, and after a remarkably short trial and jury deliberation, the two were found guilty in 1903 and were executed by hanging on February 3, 1903. They were the first women to ever be hanged at London's Holloway prison.